few seasons ago, we had the founder of CHILDSFARM, Joanna Jensen, on the show to talk to us about how she built that business and how she exited. Since then, she's written a book. It's called Making Business Child's Play. And in it, she shares with founders who are on a startup and scaling journey how to make sure you've got all of the basics sewn up. We're talking about market validation. We're talking about making sure that your IP is sewn up, that you've got the right partnerships in place, that you're building relationships with the right people, and that your P&L is right. And at the back of the book, she even has a little black book with all of the vetted contacts that she's used over the years to make your lives easier. So we got her on the show to talk about the book, to give us a little taster. The reason I did that was, I don't know, there's a lot of business books out there. I personally don't always have time to make space for them in my life. I like to hear a little bit about them before I dive in. So doing that for you, let's have a listen. Joanna Jensen, founder of CHILDSFARM and recent business book publisher, welcome back to Brand Growth Heroes.
Oh, thank you for having me, Fifi.
It's so good to see you. It looks like a very sunny day there.
It's a lovely sunny day. It is quite bracing, but it's a beautiful day. And we've just had our lawn seeded and we've got about 4,000 birds on it.
Oh, Jesus.
I think they've told all their mates. I mean,
party.
literally, it's a total bird party.
So, how did your book launch go?
Oh, wow. Do you know, it is just, look, running a business, founding a business, that's quite hard work.
Yeah.
Launching a book is not that dissimilar. It is. There's so much you have to do. And of course, you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you're meant to do. Nobody's given me a blueprint. No one's given me a playbook. This is how you launch a book. So we've been making it up as we go along. I've got an amazing PR. I've got an amazing Girl Friday marketing gal, Tilda, who's brilliant. And it's a lot of self-promotion. It is just like launching a business.
But it's funny that you should say that you don't have a blueprint or a map, because isn't that just what you've just done?
Oh, so clever.
Yeah.
This is the new book, Making Business Child's Play.
How to Build Winning Brands by Joanna Jensen, founder of CHILDSFARM. Tell us, the reason we have you on the show is because when you told me at the Brand Growth Heroes mini MBA final ceremony this summer that you were so kind to come and be one of our expert panelists at, you said you were launching this book and it was a blueprint on how to start and grow your business. I was like, okay, we have got to share this with our listeners, particularly those who might be at an earlier stage of their business. Talk us through the premise of the book, the things that you want to share with everybody. You said earlier, 15 years, of experience in one chapter. Like, tell us about that.
I think when you're setting up a business, you're starting your business, you don't know what you don't know. And I remember when I started doing CHILDSFARM, I didn't even know what FMCG stood for. I'd never heard of fast-moving consumer goods. And I felt every meeting or every conversation I had, I felt like a complete Luddite. And that I really was just making a fool of myself. And I had to write things on my hands when I went to meetings. And, it was one of those things where I was just spending so much time learning rather than doing. And I thought there must be an easier way to help other entrepreneurs bypass this sort of months, if not years of learning and give them a bit of a fast track. So that really was the motivation for the book. It is certainly not going to be something that I'm going to be retiring on. That's for sure. That's the other thing no one tells you. You write a book, you may as well just sort of, start burning £50 notes. But it's kind of my give back to entrepreneurs. It's something I wish I had when I was on my journey.
So let's talk it through, because I know there's so many business books out there and I always get terrified going, oh God, I'm just going to be totally overwhelmed. I need to hear a little bit about what I'm going to learn from a business book before I dive into it. Before I say I'm going to actually put aside some time or money to buy it. How does it work?
Right, there's lots of pictures in it, and they're not pictures of me, you'll be delighted to hear. They are pictures of what it looks like. So, for example, I've done chapters which is, so from the very beginning, you've got this idea, you've had this brainwave that we need to make strawberry marmalade. And strawberry marmalade is going to be the next big thing. I take you through the whole validation process. Is that the right thing to be doing? This isn't a case of just asking your mum and your best mate whether they think it's a good idea. You have to go a bit broader than that. You need to understand, is there a market for strawberry marmalade? So there are huge amounts of pieces of market research you can get hold of by going through the British Library. But people don't know that. So you don't know what you don't know.
The inside secrets. When you launched CHILDSFARM, did you do market validation? Or have you learned this kind of by trial and error?
No, that's the first thing I did.
Okay, how did you do it?
So went to the British Library, and one of my investors, Andrew Leake, helped me, and we sort of tag-tailed going to the British Library, because at the time you could only look at 3 things in one go, which wasn't really enough. But if you think about the research data that comes from Euromonitor or Mintel, anyone that's done as a generalist, not bespoke, but any general piece of research, the British Library buys. And they buy it so we can utilise it.
And so what were you looking for? What are you suggesting people look for? Because I always think this is interesting. People go, oh, I don't need that. I've got a feeling, I've got a good feeling. Why would you need that data?
Okay, let me give you the example of CHILDSFARM. So CHILDSFARM, baby and child toiletries business, how big is that market? So I discovered it was 150 million. We could therefore write our business plan based on the fact that within 5 years, we reckoned we could get 15 to 20% of that market. Now, if you plunge in without doing this data and your strawberry marmalade idea and you find there is no market for it and there is no data on it, you're taking quite a big risk. But you can also see how big the marmalade category is. What you need to understand is all your blood, sweat and tears worth the outcome you're looking for? So in my case, I was looking for an exit. Would I be able to build a business that is a justifiable exit to a trade purchaser? And you start this process right at the very beginning. Or your idea may be, I just want a business that pays me a steady income and I can make something out of it over 10, 15 years and I'll carry on doing it till I'm dust. That is, again, you can model that too, because you can understand what sort of income you're going to be getting out of it. But if you go into this blind, you haven't got a clue. You also need to understand your competitors, because if you don't understand their market share and the impact and how much they have in different retailers, you don't know and you can't judge what your business could get, and therefore it's going to be really hard to write your business plan because your assumptions are going to have no backbone.
One of the things we do on the Brand Growth Heroes Mini MBA, actually, and this is probably for brands that are further along and scaling, which I know your next book is going to be about, we make our founders look at their competitors in terms of the assets and capabilities and partners that their competitors have and their P&Ls. We get them to imagine what the P&L of their competitors is and then what assets and capabilities they have. And we see, okay, well, if distribution, say you're in chilled drinks and distribution in chilled drinks is like a key success factor to winning, do your competitors have a partnership with a chilled drinks distributor and merchandiser? Because if they do, it's going to be pretty hard to win against someone who has a capability that actually ticks one of the massive key success factor boxes. It's so important, as you say, to know about your competitors, not just who they are, but really to think about it quite deeply, I think, and map out what they would do in the next 2 to 5 years as well, as you build your business plan.
Totally. And you've got seasonality as well. So if you think about, part of our offering was sun cream, but sun cream isn't an all year round sale. And if you get a rubbish summer and it pours with rain, your sales are going to decrease exponentially. So it allows you to really understand seasonality, and a lot of the data that you find is done on a category will average out over 5 years, and that's what you're looking for. It will identify who your major competitors are, how much market share that they have, what that actually equates to in terms of pounds, shillings and pence. It is giving you everything you need to know, and that is a great start.
I'm thrilled to introduce Brand Growth Heroes' newest partner, Jolson. Jolson is a leading B Corp certified commercial law firm that specialises in guiding the founders of scaling CPG brands. With long-term relationships with clients like Little Moons, Trip, Eat Natural, Bear, Graze and Pulson, Jolson is also famous for advising the Innocent founders in their landmark sale to Coca-Cola. And believe it or not, they still work with the Innocent founders at Jam Jar Investments today. I'm especially impressed by how Jolson sets founders up for long-term success and by their commitment to championing female founders. Recently, I asked Jolson managing partners Phil Hale-Smith and Paul Chappie why it's important that founders consider engaging with a commercial law firm that really understands consumer packaged goods.
Ultimately, we're here to provide legal advice, but actually that legal advice is sort of irrelevant if you're not putting it into context. Thinking about how you make a consumer business, co-packing arrangements, understanding the supply chain, thinking about your sort of cost of goods, all of that is essential to ensure that we're delivering. How do you actually make a business work in the consumer space from a legal point of view, but understanding the marketplace fully? And having worked with consumer brands for the last 25 years, we have a great understanding of the whole space, whether that's manufacturing, the customer, the supply chain, the branding part of it, and all of that requires some legal input as well as understanding how the parts fit together.
At the end of the day, if you don't have someone that's been in the trenches day in, day out for a couple of decades, you're going to be disadvantaged.
Huge thanks to Brand Growth Heroes podcast sponsors Jolson. Now let's get back to the show. Okay, so market validation. What's after that?
Oh, know your consumer, because you can see and say, right, there's a marketplace out there. But if you don't know who's going to buy your product, and that's not just one single person, it could be a collection of people, you don't know how to market to them. So again, if I use CHILDSFARM as an example, we were selling to parents, but we were also selling to caregivers, to grandparents, to aunts and uncles. But our consumer was actually a child. We had to think about all of those considerations, and we needed to understand who our hero consumer was, which was a mother. Ironically, when we launched, it was a mother who already had children. And then as we introduced the baby range, we would have these dual heroes, one who already had children and one who was a first-time new mum just about to have a new baby. Because by that stage, we had two different ranges. So we needed to understand how much money she had, where she lived, what she read, what she ate, where she shopped. Because without knowing that, we couldn't effectively target her. And your marketing funds can absolutely evaporate in front of your eyes if you don't really take that time to understand and pinpoint and target those consumers. Meta has a place. It is not the sole form of marketing. And again, I'm told very often, Meta knows who my consumer is. Honestly, they don't care. They are just working on an algorithm to strip you naked of every penny that you've got. Let's be honest.
I've never heard that before. No one's ever said to me, Meta knows who my consumer is. Who says that to you?
I've heard it from a number of brands that I've invested in, and I'm afraid it leaves me with my jaw slack on the floor. Because what it's telling me is, fundamentally, you have no idea who your consumer is. You don't think it's important. And you therefore are going to be wasting money.
I think founders don't necessarily at the first part of their journey realise that knowing your consumer isn't just about, first of all, imagining that you are your consumer, because most younger founders think that everyone is like them. And secondly, they probably don't realise that most of the value bought through retail grocery anyway is bought by mums with kids. In terms of the percentage of sales in retail grocery channel that comes from which group of consumers, it's usually parents.
Yeah.
And thirdly, I think they don't realise, and this is that they come with a pen portrait, which is great, it's a good start of who their consumer is. But then when you say, what would that consumer be using currently? So what are you going to be an alternative or a substitute for? And they say, oh, well, there's nothing like it right now. And I say, yeah, but they must be. So what were people, when you came to the market with CHILDSFARM, what were those mothers using already?
They were using Aveeno and they were using Johnson's Baby. And for those children, and not forgetting CHILDSFARM, the premise of it was for eczema-prone skin and sensitive skin. So they would be using Oilatum, which was sort of medicated, sits on your skin, effort, and predominantly Aveeno, and not really thinking about it, and steroid cream. So we were coming in with a natural, ethical, Fragranced, because we were using organic essential oils that didn't irritate even the most sensitive skin. We came in with an alternative plus.
Oilatum, you kind of come away smelling slightly clinical, I think. You know,
Yes.
we've all had to do this. Johnson's, lots of parents would use. I find it makes my skin really dry. And then Aveeno is great, but it's not available in all supermarkets, or at least it wasn't.
And it's expensive. We wanted something that was affordable for any mum who had a child. And this is 1 in 5. So again, more research. I knew 1 in 5 under 5s suffered from atopic eczema. So I could build my business plan around data. So I knew it was going to be a mum who was feeling a bit helpless and wanting to make a difference and a change to their child. And therefore, they needed something affordable and usable, but ideally, they didn't want to have something separate for that child. They wanted something that the whole family could use, so it had to be sort of universal. So when I thought about my packaging, I made it not look like medicinal oilatum, not blue and white, not a big neon sign saying, oh, you've got poorly skin. I wanted it to be fun, all the colours of the rainbow, fresh and exciting, a little bit potty. And that is how the labels for CHILDSFARM came about. I wanted it to be, yeah, I have poorly skin, but nobody knows.
What about your brand at the beginning and your brand as you grow and your brand when you exit? Did you have experience where the brand look and feel that you started with evolved over time? And how did you feel about that? Did you feel sad, or did you feel that you'd got it wrong, or did you feel proud that it was evolving? I know from the founders I work with, people find it very hard to let go of their original branding, but sometimes it isn't optimized for the marketplace and what they're trying to communicate.
I think we refreshed and tweaked throughout the course of our journey, probably too much, because every time you do a rebrand, it costs you money. But we never left the core element. So the images stayed the same. We just smartened it up. So we topped and tailed it with some colour that matched the lid. The logo didn't change actually until 6 months ago. The business is now owned by PZ Cussons. They've changed the logo. They've changed the imagery on the labels. So it has all changed. But in the 12-year period that I was running that business, it was just refreshed. Again, we'd do our research, we'd understand what ethics and values were important to our consumers, and we would make sure that they were highlighted in the hierarchy of the package, imagery, and messaging. So nothing was done as a sort of cavalier gesture. Everything, if we were talking about recycled bottles, where did that go? How important was that to our consumers? And we didn't guess, we did quantitative research. Now, I know a lot of people say, oh, well, doing quant research is so expensive. It's not as expensive of getting your whole brand messaging wrong.
So when you say quant, was that like using a tool like Viper online, or was it in-whole quant?
I would use a third party, and I still use that. I'm speaking to her this afternoon for a brand I'm working on at the moment. And she will pull together 1,000 people who she believes could be the potential consumers of that brand. You're asking them questions about the look and feel. You're asking them questions about what they currently use, where they shop for those products, price points, absolutely everything. And also, have they heard about it before? So you do your first brand awareness dip. Once you have launched and once you've first got your distribution in place, I would suggest you do that every year to understand that everything that you're doing, all the money that you're spending, is actually growing your business rather than doing nothing for your business. And you've got to ask yourself these questions. You can't sit there and say, oh, I know who my consumer is. I know everything about it. You don't. Unless you can actually get someone to validate that externally for you, you could get it horribly wrong.
A lot of founders will use something like a test, or I know that Elm right now has a new platform, not just for sales data that come, or your own sales data out and your sales data in, but also brand dip, as you call it. And founders will go in and they will say, let's just take a test, and they will set up their questions, and then they'll get the answers back using that 1,000, panel of people who they have decided. There's a lot of margin for error there. It's like, first of all, if you're a founder, are they the right 1,000 people? Secondly, have you asked the right questions? Do you understand the research objectives? Have you asked the right questions? Thirdly, are you interpreting the answers correctly? Are you missing any of the insights? And it's interesting as you say this, I wonder whether there is a role for people to bring in just to manage a project. They can still use their attest, they can still use their Elm, but to bring in an expert overseer who will help them with the methodology of that quant project.
We used a lovely woman called Samantha Rogers throughout the whole of CHILDSFARM's history. And I tell you what, if you are intending to then go through an exit, so do a trade sale or get some private equity investment, it is vital that you have this third-party data and that you can show that you've responded to it. That will give your investor absolute confidence that you are not being single-minded and not understanding who your consumer is and your customer is. It shows that you're thinking outside of the box. It shows that you're adapting, you're pivoting, you're listening to who your consumer is and what it is that he, she, they, it want from your brand and expect from your brand.
That's really interesting. So you think that's important at exit stage?
I think it's absolutely vital. It's also, if you're raising capital full stop, you cannot present a deck to a potential investor without understanding who your consumer is and how they operate and having some third-party research. I mean, I've looked at decks that have got, they have no source material at all.
I know.
And then what they're putting in, they make it up. They must think we're morons, that we don't go and look at it. This sort of stuff gives investors so much confidence.
But you know what drives me nuts is actually, and a lot of the decks that come my way, and not anyone that I work with, but a lot of the decks that do come my way, it is all very, very vague and top line, where consumer and pain points and insight and real understanding of market opportunity is. And when I say I'm really surprised that this isn't very in depth, it has never been brought up before. And there's plenty of people who've invested in their business. And I think this is something that hasn't been called out enough. I don't think a lot of the people who are investing in CPG brands understand this stuff themselves. And if you don't understand it yourself, then how do you know that it's important?
Well, interestingly, I'm just about to write an article about angel investing and the red flags you need to look for, because I've been guilty of doing this myself. And I've invested in an early stage, and 3 years on, they're still talking about their investor being X and Y and Z. Their consumer, they've not grown. They don't understand. They think it is so unimportant. How on earth are you going to get any distribution if you don't know how your consumer behaves and what they want? Say a menopause product. There's no point in you doing a whole load of performance and paying for stuff on TikTok, because people of our age are just simply not going on TikTok. You're better off just working on Facebook or Instagram. But Facebook is where we all go. And we go to things like Spirit at Christmas. We go to consumer shows. We love word of mouth.
We buy House and Garden magazine.
We would love to be accredited, it to be a Good Housekeeping approved product.
Yeah.
You've got to think like your consumer. This is what I also find slightly baffling, is most social media teams in brands are 20-somethings. If you're selling to a 50-something, please don't litter it with emojis. We think LOL means lots of love. You've got to talk and speak to your consumer as they talk and speak in their language. And if you don't know who your consumer is, how are you going to communicate them in a way that doesn't just piss them off?
It's funny, actually, because when I came in this morning, I brought Jip a present. Jip, my studio producer, sound engineer extraordinaire, everything. He's a bit of everything. I brought him in some Candy Kittens Disco Dreams, right? Because he's like really well-known producer on the island, on the Isle of Man. And it just reminded me of him. And he went, "Oh my God, I hate their ad." And I said, "What?" Typical Manx man, by the way, when you give them a present, they don't say thank you. They say, "Oh my God, no, I don't like it." My husband does that to me all the time. And he knows Candy Kittens ad, which I haven't seen. And I love Candy Kittens. That's why I bought it. And I'm sure he's going to love the sweets too. So I'm not dissing Candy Kittens. But obviously that ad really annoys him at his age. And it's probably really good for the people that they're targeting. But it totally gave him the, I hate that ad.
But Jip's not the target audience.
Jip's not the target. Sorry, Jip.
You shouldn't be eating them. Give them back.
No, you're not like, give them back to me. Given that you didn't, give them back. So you mentioned, we talked about exit. We talked about getting things right for your venture capital, your PE, even your angel investors' money at the beginning. Talk to us about something else really important that you cover in your book, which is IP, getting your IP protected.
Yeah, this is something which I think a lot of people overlook because it looks quite, it doesn't matter to me, it's too soon. It's never too soon. And registering your IP, so your intellectual property, from the moment you create it, so the moment you create a brand logo, a name, you make sure you do it, you check, and I do a nice guide of the steps you need to take. You go on and make sure that that brand name doesn't exist already, that you can get all the different .coms, .co.uk's. You can do all of that and that nobody else has registered.
Social handles, really important.
Exactly. And also you need to make sure that in the categories in which you're going to sell, that there is no other brand that is called that. All of these things are really important. The moment that you are clear on that, you can register it. You can do it yourself, but there are specific and specialist IP registration solicitors. Mine is actually talking about the need of IP in the book. So you heard it from him first. And he was brilliant for me. I think he saved us an absolute fortune. But also, we then entertained. This is why it's so important. We had a guy came over from South Korea, said, we really want to sell CHILDSFARM in South Korea. He had barely left the office and he had registered CHILDSFARM and our logo in South Korea. It took us 18 months and 20 grand to get that back.
And could he do that when he didn't even own it?
Yeah, he didn't even own it. It didn't matter. I mean, we got it back, but that was spending 20 grand and it took 18 months and it took all that time of faffing around. And it is so much easier to get it done. And you register. So not only do you register your logo and your name, but your get-up. So for us, we registered what the bottle looked like. So logo, what it is, where it comes from, blah. We did that. And so when Asda launched a copycat brand, they had one letter from our solicitor and they pulled it from the shelves. Someone else not only did a copycat brand, they cut and paste from our website everything that we'd written, including a number of typos. And again, we sent a letter and they said, oh, it doesn't look anything like it at all. So we sent a really stern letter and they stopped. It will save you a fortune if you do it at the beginning.
I have a really close working relationship with a law firm called Jolson, who actually sponsors the podcast. And I love working with them. But I brought a founder to see them and we were talking about raising money, and shareholder agreements and SEIS and ASA, and I know that you're really big into that as well. We can talk about that in a minute. Jolson said what it would cost, and I was actually quite shocked at how little it was. I really was. And when we left, we went for a cup of tea, and the founder said, "Oh, it's a lot more than Seed Legals or whatever." And I said, first of all, are you mental? That is not a lot of money at all. Like, I was actually quite shocked. And secondly, if that means that you're going to have all the right documents in place and you're going to have these people on board as your friends and partners for the next, 10 years or 5 years or whatever it is, that is nothing, because you have to see it, not what is it compared to like doing it on the internet, what the cost of doing it on the internet myself or doing it with Seed Legals, who I'm sure are great for generic stuff. But what is it compared to if we get it wrong? What is it compared to the cost of getting it wrong? What is it compared to the value that we could generate? It's flipping it on its head.
You go to someone like Jolson's and what they're giving you is years of experience, somebody at the end of the telephone. You have a funny 5 minutes, you can phone them up and speak to them, and they're not going to charge you for that as long as it is only a funny 5 minutes. But these guys will hold your hand through the whole of your journey. So again, plan ahead. You are going to get to a stage where you're either bringing in a huge amount of investment or potentially you're doing a trade sale or whatever it may be. These guys have partnered with you the whole way and they will ensure that they get you the best deal, because relationships, and I talk about this in the book, the relationships are not this.
Sorry, no one can see you what you're doing. wiggly fingers on typing board.
I'm typing. That is not a relationship. And I know that the 18 to 24-year-old generation has a real problem making telephone calls. But if you want to be a successful founder, you have got to talk to people. You've got to go and visit them. You've got to go and see your manufacturer, your supplier here. You've got to sit down and build these relationships, because when the shit hits the fan, you want these guys to step up for you.
Yeah, we had a live event on Wednesday, which I know you couldn't make, unfortunately, but it was with Jake Carls of Midday Squares, who his role is rainmaker. So he is on a plane every single week, gets to New York, gets to Washington, gets to LA, and has 3, 4, 5 people text, goes, hey, and he just meets them for 5 minutes sometimes, walks to the next Uber stop with them, has lunch with them, has coffee with them. And then when they have real relationships, he was saying, it's not about asking them for anything. But when the time comes, if they do want in or they want to help in some way or open doors for him or whatever, they can, because they actually genuinely have followed the business and they've genuinely had a real friendship with him. I mean, it's just fabulous, right? And the value that brings is incredible.
It is. I think of some founders, for example, Julie Chen from Cheeky Panda, the loo roll.
Yes.
I saw her 3 times in a week. And every time we were laughing and every time we had a bit of idle chit chat, if Julie phoned me up and said, I really need your help now, I would give it. Because we've got to know each other better. We knew each other anyhow, but every time you sort of spend an hour together doing, whatever we did, you start building up the layers of that relationship. And it works both ways. And I discovered this at CHILDSFARM when we had a post that went viral and we didn't have enough product and we had to get our manufacturers. There was everyone that supplied for us was so happy for us and bust their balls to help us, apart from our bottle supplier. And they said, we can probably get you some bottles in about 6 months. At this stage, we were selling 1.5 million bottles of product a week. So that wasn't going to cut the mustard. And so we stopped using them. But everyone else, they were putting on 24/7 shifts. They were bringing in extra workers.
Do you think, in hindsight, potentially you didn't have the time to build the relationship that was necessary so that with that bottle supplier, so that when you did have that massive increase in demand, you didn't have the backing of the relationship, potentially because you just hadn't had the time or didn't have the right people in place?
No, they were just shit. If I'm being really honest, they didn't have the... it's quite interesting because we worked with a lot of smaller suppliers and we worked with a lot of breakaway suppliers. So we worked, Bodypack, for example, made our bottles. They'd been part of M&H Berry plastic bottles. Huge, huge, huge. He left and set up his own deal. We worked with him. So we worked with people who were founders, who it mattered, that relationships mattered to them. And the bottle company that let us down was another big company.
Behemoth, yeah.
Yeah, it didn't really matter to them.
Okay.
And, our label suppliers down the road in Hungerford here, they, again, I even now go and see them. I take kids from schools round to go and see that art can become a career.
So we've talked about market validation. We've talked about the importance of IP and securing that. We've talked about the importance of having third-party data backing up your business plan and the market opportunity. We've talked about the importance of real relationships. I know that we're coming up to time where you and I both have to go to an 11 o'clock. So it's really important that we spend some time talking about the Little Black Book.
Yes.
Tell everybody about the Little Black Book.
So I went through every person that had helped me in my life and people that I've met subsequently and people that I respect and I've put them all at the back of the book. So, and there's a reason for them. This is everything from angel investor groups to where you can get your research from to who I think is helpful when it comes to registering your IP. It's a myriad of people there and community groups as well, because that's so important. Something I never had was a group of other founders that I could hang out with and lean on and learn from. So I just sort of collectively shoved them down at the back. And it means that you don't have to scrabble around the internet like I did because you didn't know the right thing to Google.
And they're all vetted.
They're all vetted. I know them. My experience with each and every one, and I've written a comment. Some of the angel investors I don't know, but they've come to me through another party who says big thumbs up. So, it's a starting place for people that matter. And some have been left off, and we're going to update those. And actually, what we're probably going to do is move the little black book to my website,
Great
so we
idea.
can make updates as and when they happen, because it's so important. I just want to give that shortcut to success for any founder.
And we'll put a link to your website in the show notes. If anyone's watching this, you'll find a link to Joanna Jensen's website in the show notes with that little black book when it goes up. How can people get hold of your book?
Very easy. If you're doing a shop on Amazon today, have a look on there. They seem to have it discounted quite a lot of the time, which is fantastic.
Show it up again so we can get a shot.
You can't miss it. And there's even a little B on it.
Making Business Child's Play.
Picture of me on the back too, just in case. You can say Amazon is very easy. You can get it with a discount, which is CF Sales 30 off the Kogan Page website, which is the publisher. WH Smith's, you can get it in the travel shops.
What I do is order it from your local independent bookstore. So
Totally.
what I do is I always take a screenshot of the book on Amazon, and then my local independent bookstore has a Facebook Messenger page, and I drop it in there and they order it for me.
Brilliant.
And I have it within about 2 days. But I think it's so important to support our local independent bookshop, right?
I totally agree. I mean, for me, a business book, they sort of curl their lip. But, you know, I'm an entrepreneur, so I go into my local bookshop and say, I live down the road.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, no,
be
so you're
really
local.
nice. Just get a couple of copies of this and stick it up there. You never know, because there's a big school where I live, and I will be going to talk to that school about this. So, you know, for me, so I'm going to universities, I'm going to schools, sixth forms, to talk about, to all those people who've got these ideas. I want to save you time, I want to save you money, but also for those people that are already established, this is a fantastic way to kick the tires on your business plan. There's a whole section on drawing up your business plan. It kicks the tires on everything. I want you not to have to spend money when you don't need to, and I want you to think out of the box and think as your retailer would think, or think as your purchaser would think, or think as an investor would think. And as you alluded to earlier, Fee, it goes on. The next book, which is all about how to scale, takes more of those insights and threads them all together with loads of information from people that have done it, from, you know, the Co-op, from Ocado, from Amazon. There's a myriad of stuff about how to get it right.
Brilliant. Joanna Jensen, thank you so much for coming on today to share that with us, and wishing you all the very best. Anyone who's listening, go and have a look for the book. Joanna's given us a code. We'll put it in the show notes. We will see you very soon. I'm sending you a big kiss.
Thanks for having me.
Bye. Thanks to Joanna Jensen. All of the information, as I said, if you want to buy her book or check out her website, is in the notes below. If you're also wanting to find out more about Brand Growth Heroes Mini MBA, you can check out our website, and there's information there on how to apply for 2026. I can't believe we're nearly there already. And please, please, if you got anything out of this episode or any of our other episodes, like, follow, subscribe to the show. It honestly makes such a difference to the way my business works, and I will really appreciate it.